All right, so now it gets fun because we're in n8n and we're going to see this stuff in action. Everything that I probably just confused you about with our payloads and our headers and all that kind of stuff, right? So let's actually just do this in n8n where you guys are probably what you're really here for. So move me out of the way here. We've got our workflow up, and what we're talking about today is how to send HTTP requests. Let me just get rid of whatever. Okay, no, we're good. How to send these HTTP requests within n8n. So here's what this node looks like, right? We talked about our methods: delete, get, head, options, patch, post, put. So right now we're just going to be looking at get and post examples. A couple things to look at here. We have our URL that we're trying to access. This is where we put in the base URL as well as that endpoint. We have our authentication methods. Now this just means the same way that when you add like we'll go with a Gmail node, right? Same way when you add this node, we have to authenticate our credentials here. So we create our credentials within this. We're putting in this case, we're just signing in, but usually we're putting in like client ID, client secret, API key, something like that. Let's grab a Supabase. This is what this one looks like as far as like, here's your service role secret, here's your host. So there's always different things to configure, right? Anyway, so that's what's going on just right here in the authentication. Now, these are either predefined credential types or generic credential types like basic, header, OAuth 2, or maybe the system has a different way, whatever API you're trying to access has a specific way that they need your credential. And we'll talk about that in this video. But you don't always have to do it like that. You could also do it as a in the body or in the header. So there's different options for us to send over the request in order to get authenticated. So let's look at that. Actually, one of the examples with Open Weather, if you've already watched that video, we'll do it again here, is they have you put your API key within the actual base URL of the GET request you're making, which is interesting. But like I said, you just have to read the documentation on how to do it. So first, before we get into reading documentation, let me just make sure this concept makes sense to you all. Here's Chipotle, right? We're going to go into here, grab the URL for Chipotle, and just chuck it in there. So we've got https://www.chipotle.com/. So if we hit test step here, we're making a GET request to Chipotle. We're not doing anything. All we're doing is saying, hey, this is the URL I want to access. And now you can see that we got a bunch of HTML back. So this is messy, right? This is just basically what we're getting here is if we come into Chipotle, we inspect the element, we are getting the HTML that was used to write this website, right? So this is what we're getting. We're getting all this nasty, I don't know what these little arrow things are called, like the formal name for them, but we're getting that stuff back that can specify what's a header, what's the script, what are the A class, what's the href. I know that all makes no sense, but it doesn't have to, right? All I'm saying is that what we're getting from Chipotle is HTML content that we have the ability to now clean up and use however we want because we have Chipotle's website. So that's a simple first GET request. That's how potentially, if you've watched one of my videos about like scraping LinkedIn profiles off Google with HTTP request, it's because we selected the base URL to basically be google.com/search, and then we can put in different parameters there. So that's Chipotle. Now I found this cool free dog API, which is apparently the internet's biggest collection of open source dog pictures, which is just great because I love dogs. So we've got our documentation right here. And so we can do different things, right? So if we send a GET request to this base URL, this is just saying it's going to list all dog breeds. And as you can see, we have different endpoints. So let me hop back into n8n. We'll paste this one in here, and we're sending a GET request. And what we have here is a bunch of different dog breeds. Let's see. Katande Tuliar. It's a pretty rare breed, but that's kind of dogs I have because my dad's allergic. But I'm glad that they're representing us on here. Anyways, tons of it's all the dog breeds, right? So that's that endpoint because we're accessing the base URL of dog.ceo/API. But then based on what we put after that, we can get different things back because this is the API endpoint. So if I just did this and we took away everything else, we're getting the content of the website, right? So that's the base URL of the dog website. Come back into here. Let's say we just want to get a random image. So this is going to display a single random image from all of the dog collection, whatever, right? So I'm going to copy this in, And as you can see, this is the base URL we just tried, but now our endpoint is /breed/image/random. So I'm assuming that we could maybe specify an image if we wanted a golden retriever. But in this case, we're saying random. So let's paste that all back in there, hit test step, and we're going to get a link. We got a success message. And this looks like we're getting a picture of a Indian Spitz. So let's open up this image, and now apparently this is an Indian Spitz. Cool. So that's our picture. Let's just do one more because I'm curious. Okay, so we're getting a picture of a little black dog that kind of looks like a fox. Anyways, back into the... I lost it. Hold on. I lost that dog API. Dog CEO's API. So then we can click back into it. And anyways, so if we go back to breeds list, close out of this. So here's how you can see you can select the type of dog you want. So we could use our breeds list to pull back all the breeds and then fill in an information there. By breed. So if we wanted just pictures of hounds, as you can see, we could come in here, and the endpoint's different this time too, where we would get, I think, a ton of different images. Looks like we're getting tons of images, maybe all images that they have on hounds. And as you can see, there we go, we got a hound picture. So that's it for Dog API. That's just a free one that I found just to show how GET requests work. Because keep in mind with these GET requests, we were not sending anything over. We were just accessing the URL and the endpoint. Okay, so now we're going to do another GET request. This one's a little different because we're going to be not sending anything over in the body or headers, but we're also going to be able to specify on the endpoint, like we just did here with getting a different dog breed or listing dog breeds or just getting a random picture. So when you're looking for API documentation on how the service you're trying to access works, you will basically just type in the name and the documentation. So as you can see, we've got Tavily and we've got DeepSeek. These are the other ones we're going to look at in this video. First, we're going to do Open Weather API documentation. So we'll click on Weather API. This one's completely free. You get 1,000 free API calls per day. You'll make an account and you generate an API key where you'll go to your profile, My API Keys, and then you can grab your key right here. Keep in mind, if you do this though, sometimes there's like a 15-minute period you have to wait after you create your account for this to actually work. So if you're trying this request and it's not working, just wait like 10, 15 minutes and then it should start working, just so you don't think you're doing something wrong. Anyways, let me copy this key and then we're going to go to API. We need to find out how to actually set up the parameters for this request. And what we want to do here is, we have all this different stuff. Let's just say right now, I just want to get current weather data. So I'm going to click on API doc for getting current weather data. What we see here is this is how we're making an API call. It gives us the base URL. So I can go ahead and copy this, paste in the base URL. And now let's look at this. We've got the base URL here, and then we specify for the weather. Whenever you see a question mark in a URL, it basically just it's sending a query and saying, okay, whatever's coming after this question mark are parameters in this base URL that we want to access. So the parameters that we're defining here are what's the latitude of the place we're looking at, what's the longitude, and then what's our API key. So I can go ahead and put in my API key right here. And now we just need latitude and longitude. So I asked ChatGPT, what are the lat and long coordinates for Salt Lake City? So we're going to put this in here. That's the lat. Let me grab the long. I'm going to go right in there. And now you can see we have our parameters, which are lat long and my API key. We'll hit test step, and we should get weather data. So clouds, broken clouds. Let's see. The temp, this is in, right now it's in a different format. It's not Fahrenheit, so don't think it's that. But Salt Lake City. Okay, cool. And then just also wanted to show that we could do this open weather map, like I talked about, return current weather data. This is literally just, these are the exact same two things. n8n has just wrapped this one up nicely for us, like I mentioned in that previous lesson. So let's say for the city, we want Salt Lake City, and we want the format to be imperial, current weather, test step, and we're going to get basically the exact same request. As you can see, temperature is 52. Feels like 54. Temperature is 52. So look at that. It's right. And then we got Salt Lake City. So that's how that works. And you're asking like maybe how do you change the format you want, all this kind of stuff. That is when we would change actually the request that we're sending over. So here you can see these are the required parameters. latitude, longitude, and your app ID, which is your API key. But then you have some optional things like units of measurement, standard, metro, imperial. And if you want to do that kind of stuff, here's an example API call. But this is going to show you what the response looks like, which, as you can see, this is in JSON. So if I went to, sorry, JSON, this is the exam. This is the request that they just sent back in their documentation. That's what it looks like. So cool. Now, that's how that one works. In this case, you would be throwing over these parameters in the URL. It would go after this stuff. You would do and a parameter, and then you would include the value. So let's actually do that real quick. At the end of, within our HTTP request, we're going to add, we want to get this back in imperial. So we're going to add and units equals imperial. So let's do that real quick. In here, we'll do it after the long. So and units equals imperial. So we got to make sure that that's all spelled correctly. And now we're getting this back temperature 53 rather than it was like probably scientific. It was like 2000 or something. So that's how you can change this GET request within your URL. But now let's start to look at some cooler examples. So we've done Chipotle, dogs. Let's look at post requests to Tavily and also to DeepSeek. So first, let's do Tavily. Once again, you're going to search up Tavily API documentation, click on docs. You'll click on get an API key. So here is my API key. As you can see, this is a free plan, 1,000 credits a month. I've only used 19, so cool. We're going to copy this API key first of all. And then on the left-hand side, we're going to click on documentation. This is going to pull up the API reference guide, which we can click on to understand the documentation. And so this is pretty cool because they actually changed this up in the intro video. If you watch that, it looks different. And they gave us a curl command right away, which is really, really helpful because curl, what you can do is you can copy this, import it straight into n8n, and it will automatically fill in your parameters. So that's helpful. And I'll show that off too. But what we have here is we have the base URL. So the base URL we want to access is tavily.com. Then we have authentication. So content type, like I said right here, application JSON. I mentioned that earlier. And then in the header, we have authorization is going to equal bearer space Tavily your API key. And then we're putting in the query of, in this case, it's going to be searching Tavily, searching the internet for who is Leo Messi. And then we have different endpoints. So we can either search Tavily's powerful web search API, or we can extract Tavily's powerful content extraction API. So I can click on search right here. We can see that we have different authorization things to set up, body parameters. We have this is required, this is required. These are additional parameters we can set up, like do we want to include images? This is a Boolean, true or false. Do we want raw content? This is the Boolean, true or false. How many results do we want? This is a number variable type, an integer. Default's 5, we can limit this to 1 or 7 or 10, all this other stuff, right? And once again, let's look at this. We have this curl command on the right, copy the curl, go back into n8n, click on import curl right here in the top right, paste in that curl command, and this fills in the parameters. We'll click import, and we can see the method changed to post, the URL changed to the base URL with the endpoint of search. Our headers got populated, which are authorization, bearer tokens. So you have to fill in your token here, of course. And so that's how that works, right? And then we have our actual body parameters that we're sending over to Tavily. And in this case, we also have to fill in the string. So let me just go with Chipotle, basic search depth, general topic. Let's change this one to news because if we go back to the docs, we can see right here. Wait. Yeah, so that's not actually the topic one. Where's the topic? Right here. Topic. The default's general, but we can do general or news. So I'm going to get news information back rather than just general information back. And then let me put in my API key. It's going to be bearer space your token. So this is my token, a space after bearer, no space after the end. And that should be good to go. We'll be able to send off this post request, and it's going to be unique because we put in Chipotle. So now we can see Chipotle gamifies Super Bowl marketing with social promotion. We've got the actual URL that we could go in and check out this article. Let's click on that real quick. Okay, so just search Google for it because I copied in the wrong information. Let me click go to. There we go. So here's that article that it found about news, which was posted 2 days ago. So that's why the news is going to look for more recent stuff, right? Anyways, Something that I won't spend too much time on, but that's pretty cool, is because this is a header HTTP request. Let's say we frequently wanted to use Tavily, we could set up a credential for this. So if I went into credential, generic credential type, and I choose a header auth, because what we're doing is we're authenticating ourselves using a header parameter in this case, we could create a new header auth. And as you can see, the name, when we're doing this right here, header, is authorization. So we'll put in authorization. And then for the value, we needed to do bearer space API token. So if I put in the value bearer space, where was my token? Right here. And I can do this. And now this credential is being saved. I could just call this Tavily credential, save that. And so now I just have this saved every time. I can get rid of this parameter. So this does two things. First of all, if you're screen sharing because you want some help, you could hide your credential like that and it should still work because we put in our token. And so we're getting the same stuff back. We're still verified without having to show it. And then also, every time you think, oh, I need to make a request to Tavily, let me just create a node real quick, an HTTP request, your credential's already there. So as you can see, I've set up a credential for chart-image already, so I don't have to go back and get my API key every time. I can just do that. And now let's say we wanted to change the search query. Let's do DeepSeek, and we'll hit test step. Now it's going to be sending that request over with this new body parameter of DeepSeek. So that's altering the request that Tavily is going to send back. And now you can see we've got news about DeepSeek. We've got articles about DeepSeek. So that one's cool. Cool tool. Also a cool way to look at how these requests work. Finally, on the topic of DeepSeek, let's head over to DeepSeek API documentation. We will click on DeepSeek API docs. Let's make our first API call. So before this, obviously you need to grab an API key from DeepSeek. So right here, it lets you open this link to create an API key. You'll have to put in a few credits, like $2 will get you a long way. That's what I did. Anyways, so here's the base URL, api.deepseek.com, and then we have different models in here. So DeepSeek-chat in the model equals DeepSeek-chat is going to be DeepSeek v3, and DeepSeek-reasoner is going to be the latest reasoning model, DeepSeek R1. So once again, we have a curl command. Copy that curl, come back into our HTTP request in n8n, import curl. We'll paste in the new DeepSeek curl command. And when we import it, we'll see post request. We have this endpoint, this base URL with this endpoint. So it auto-populates that. Once again, it's going to do an authorization with a bearer DeepSeek key. So we could go in here and create another header credential once again. So let me just grab my DeepSeek key real quick. And I'm just obviously going to delete these keys after this video, so don't even think about it. But there's my DeepSeek key. Post, we're doing this. And now here we have the model. So this is where DeepSeek chat right now is going to be accessing DeepSeek v3, because right here, remember, model equals DeepSeek chat, and it says up here, DeepSeek chat is v3, DeepSeek reasoner is R1. So anyways, right now we're accessing chat, and we have a system role, which is your helpful assistant, and we have a user role, which is we're just saying hello. So what I'm going to say is just tell me a joke, and we should send this off to DeepSeek, and we'll be getting back a request. This is very similar to the way we would set up like an OpenAI message and model node, where we have a system role and a user role. Anyways, here's what we get back, and the actual content of the joke that we got back is, sure, here's a lighthearted joke. Why don't skeletons fight each other? Because they don't have the guts. We got that joke earlier with the joke API, I believe. Anyways, that seems to be a common joke from these models. But anyways, let's change this to reasoner. And now we're accessing the R1 reasoning model. We'll see that the response we get back is a little bit different because it's going to have like, this is what I thought about, and then here's the actual content. This one also will take a little longer, as you can see. But I hope you guys realize that value real quick. Being very new to all this kind of stuff, you don't have to really, you do have to understand it, but being able to import curl makes this process so much easier. So anyways, here is the content. Here's a lighthearted one. Why don't cats play poker in the jungle? Because there are too many cheetahs. Nice. And then the reasoning content is, okay, the user asked for a joke. Let me think of something light and not too complicated. Maybe a pun, so blah, blah, blah. So here is the reasoning that it did when it thought through how to respond to us. So cool. Yeah. I hope this one helped. I think that it's really helpful to just see the examples in n8n. You've got some great ones to play around with right now. Tavli's a great one. Obviously, you can access DeepSeek through an HTTP request as well. Um, you know, in OpenAI message and model, we were doing the exact same thing we just did here because in OpenAI we have the option to have a user message right here and a system message. So that's exactly what we did, where we set up the user and the system message within DeepSeek. This is just a nice HTTP request wrapped up in a chat interface, natural language interface that is easier for us, the same way that this is over here, but n8n just wrapped it up for OpenAI because it's sending a request to OpenAI, obviously. So yeah, like I said, hope it's helpful. Please let me know if anything is still unclear. But from here, we're going to move more into module 2, which kind of is going to talk about what JSON is, why it's important, how we understand it, and then there's some more from there. But hopefully, these lessons just keep building on top of each other, and this kind of topic of APIs and sending requests just becomes more and more like a second language, which it will. It just takes some repetition. So, thanks, guys.